a lot about a glory that is to be revealed. But then he doesn't reveal it. He speaks instead in Paul's usual soaring and rhythmic cadences about what awaits us in glory, but there's no detail. Instead, Paul makes a point of talking about hope. And this, at some level, bugs us. We don't necessarily want hope. Hope is too squishy. We want to see the end product, or at least be handed a highly informational brochure. We want to have evidence of everything that God has intended for us right here, right now, right in front of us. We want to see our own rightness with the big guy played out across everything we do, across everything we see and touch. We want evidence in our successful career. We want evidence in those 3 inches that have fallen away from our waistline. We want the Lord to miraculously improve the mileage we've been getting. Having those things, those measures in front of us, would be tremendously confidence building. It would work well with our desire to see the product. We know what we were getting in for. And unfortunately for us, that is not how God works. Instead of giving us that absolute, you can touch it, you can feel it, certainty, God comes to us another way, asks us to approach God and God's promise with hope. And as the Apostle Paul puts it so simply, hope is not certainty. I do not hope for the thing that I know. Hope is about trust. And that means that hope woven within it has an element of doubt. Some small sprinkle of not knowing for sure. To have hope is to have a yearning for a future reality that you do not yet grasp. And hope, for Paul, is an essential part of the Christian journey. Faith and hope and love abide. In verse 24 of the reading you heard today, my New Revised Standard Version says that in hope we were saved. It's important. It has to do with our salvation. The New National Version says, in this hope we were saved. If you go back to the King James, it says, by hope we were saved. It's part of God's plan for reconciliation with us. Without hope, that reconnection with God can't happen. Our willingness to accept the unknowability of what God has intended for us, to accept that it is good, but to know that for some things we are just going to have to wait. It's an important part of salvation. Paul tells us this again and again in Romans. It's woven up deeply, this hope, this faith, what it means to be in relationship with God. And it is that hope we have to embrace whenever we turn ourselves towards any future, anything that is not yet here. For all of our careful planning, all of our meticulous mapping out of all possible futures before us, what is to come is not something we can hold in our hands. try to plan. We can try to be wise, taking a good, hard look at our options. But the reality of what lies before any of us in our own lives, in our relationships, in everything, that can't be known. At least not until we get there. And that's true in our personal lives, in our lives in the here and now, but it is doubly true about what God has in store for all of us. That future that occurs in God's time, when the veil of this life is cast away. That's not something we can grasp. That's not something we can touch. It's not something we can feel. And the reason for that is because it's not a product. It's not a thing. It's not a commodity. It is not something we go out and buy. And that we like everything to be measurable, easy to grasp. We want to be able to see. We can't think that way. Because that way of thinking has very little to do with God. It's not a thing we buy. Think of the relationship we seek with God, we yearn for with God in Christ. That's not a product we buy, but more like a present. Or like a gift that is being prepared for us and will be given to us by someone who loves us. And if we think of it that way, we realize that nothing ruins the joy of getting a gift like knowing what it is beforehand. So have hope. Don't spoil the surprise.